My name is Prashant Sharma. I'm a part of the marketing function at IIMjobs and Hirist.com, which is, of course, a part of the Infoedge conglomerate, much like Naukri.com. We today have the pleasure to launch this series with two wonderful and extremely seasoned panelists. Both of them aren't too happy with my introduction skills, which is why I'm going to use one line, which I don't think they will like, but I'll use it anyway. Combined, we have about 7 decades of experience on our panel today, and it's just two people. Uh, with respect to who they are, I'll start with Ms. Sharmeen Khalid. She's the CHRO of the InfoEdge India family. She's someone who's been at this organization for close to 2 decades. Apart from that, her experience spans close to 3 decades. We're very excited to launch this with her. Apart from that, the second guest here is Mr. S. Nathan. Of course, you already know him. He's an influencer, he's a leader, he's inspirational. And as someone who's already met him, I am also a big fan of him. One thing that I would like to avoid in his introduction, as he shared, is not give too much of his career, but he enjoys watching movies, cooking, and he enjoys messing up the kitchen. Those are his words, not mine at all. But before we move forward with him, I'd like to quickly invite Ms. Sharmeen Khalid to share her opinion, her context setting, and what is recruitment in a post-pandemic world and in the current world looking like to her. Sharmeen, ma'am, over to you to start things.
Thanks, Prashant, and good evening to all the all people who are who've joined us in the webinar. Welcome all of you, and I'm really looking forward to the next 45 minutes. I'm sure all of us will come out of it more enriched, and we'll learn new things as we sort of go on during the in this webinar. First of all, I'm really wishing that all of you are healthy and fine, both physically and emotionally. These are trying times, and we are trying to do our best. So wish you, all the best in these trying times. Now, I would just like to begin with the term that we heard of, some of us or most of us would have heard a few years ago, which is, a VUCA world. And never did we imagine it will take this shape and form in the form of this pandemic. VUCA, as most of you would know, is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. But COVID sort of redefines this term as well, and this is a new level that we have seen. Being the eternal optimist that I am, I think this will open up a host of opportunities as well. While of course there's like a lot of grim news as we see in the industry. Companies are shutting shop. Businesses are a lot of businesses have come to a standstill. Companies have are like sort of either cutting salaries or freezing hiring, and they're asking people to go and so on and so forth. So right now it looks grim, but we will all emerge stronger from this, and I'm sure there'll be many new opportunities which will get created in the form of new businesses, new services, new products. So I mean, basically the question for us as individuals and as part of the recruitment fraternity and the HR fraternity is, how do we seize the opportunity and make the most of it? Coming to some of the trends which are very visible, to some of them are visible, some of them are right now feeble signs, but maybe they'll take shape and form as we go along. Like I said, is while some companies will suffer, or at least temporarily a lot, but there'll be companies whose business will actually grow manifold because of the COVID. Like for example, we are doing this on Microsoft Teams. There is Zoom, there is Big Basket, there's Amazon, there's Microsoft, etc., etc. All these technology-enabled companies, all these e-commerce companies will benefit. Healthcare, pharma, etc. All these companies could benefit from this kind of so they will have many more opportunities than pre-COVID. Secondly, there'll be some companies for whom it'll be business as usual, like your essential services companies, your consumer companies, like Dabur or HLL, etc. And of course, there's a third lot which is hugely impacted. So I mean, there are, so I mean, this is how the landscape completely has changed, just in the, in 40-45 days. Secondly, I think, hiring will become more and more digitized. We were toying as HR professionals with some of the things like virtual career fairs or virtual hackathons or video interviews or online assessments. or video, assessments. All this will move to the next level, and a lot of things will move sort of digital. That's the second trend which is looking like it. Third is that all of us have been like pleasantly surprised, or rather surprised by our potential to work from home, which means that many jobs could move work from home. Now, what does that mean? It means that some of the locational constraints that we have while hiring might, those lines might blur away. What stops, let's say, a call center company, from sort of onboarding a person in that person's hometown in Jamnagar or Jaipur or Agra for that matter, and why call him or her all the way to Gurgaon and make him or her stay in a PG accommodation if they can, they can be enabled online at their hometown. Secondly, because of this work from home, basically maybe the employer-employee relationship could become more transactional in nature, more contractual in nature, which means that gig economy sort of could really sort of accelerate the whole gig economy, because people will be available for a particular contractual assignment, and that's it. And some of the companies which are struggling because they have been hugely impacted, they might want to, instead of sort of just firing people, they might want to outplace those people. So that's an opportunity. They might also want to upskill and reskill their people who are surplus, and they might want to use them in other parts of the company. So these are some 5 or 6 trends which are, looking like reality in the new COVID or post-COVID world, which is food for thought for us in the recruitment industry. And therefore, now, what is the message that I want to give to all people? Remain connected to your stakeholders and customers. If you think that there are no hiring happening, so I might as well sort of not call up my stakeholder, not remain connected. But please remember that new opportunities will emerge only if you're connected to your stakeholders and customers, and you hear from them firsthand that this is what they need, and these are how this is how their requirement has changed, be it hiring or any process related to manpower. So just be connected to them and just keep. Secondly, I'm sure there are some difficult positions or difficult roles that you have. Can you build an active pipeline for those kind of candidates? Reach out to people who you could never ever have thought of reaching out to, and build an active database that if the moment hiring opens, you have a ready pool of people available and you could sort of fill those roles. Thirdly, for placement consultant companies, could they actually sort of look at outplacement as an opportunity? Fourthly, this is an opportunity. This is the time to reskill, upskill yourself. Maybe you were an excellent sales recruiter. Would you like to try tech recruitment? And during these times when we know that this is what is going to be, I mean, maybe more tech roles will be available. So would you like to reskill, upskill yourself? And lastly, yeah, I mean, broadly these, basically upskill yourself in other types of hiring. See if you can sort of do some, the spring cleaning. Look at things which you have put on the back burner. For example, my own hiring team has done a wonderful job of rewriting all the JDs, doing a wonderful job of putting up a new career site, spending their time in employer branding, spending some time in redefining the IGP process and stuff like that. So there are a lot of processes which you can sort of work on during these times. So yeah, I mean, net to summarize, it's a whole lot of possibilities, and let's look at them as possibilities with a positive frame of mind.
Right. I think I'll take it forward from there. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sharmeen. I firmly believe that in any situation, what you said in conclusion is such a fair point, that let's see these opportunities and let's see it in a positive light. Which is now, I'd like to move on to the next positive person that I know is also on the call, Mr. S.V. Nathan. I'd like to invite you in to share your 2 bits, your 2 cents on how you've been dealing with this on a personal level as well as an organizational leader. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prashant. First of all, I want to thank you and your firm for organizing this wonderful webinar. Want to thank all those who are on the call today. It's a Friday, and certainly we didn't want this at between 5 and 6. But as many things you will realize, or would have realized by now, that this work from home business, uh, it works, but sometimes we don't know our boundaries. So pardon me for that. So talent acquisition 4.0, or in its new avatar, what I'd like to talk about is a very simple structure, and I will just call it IPS. IPS is very easy to remember. So you can also talk about IAS and IPS, and I'm going to introduce both these to you. I is for innovation. So you will find that there's a lot of things that's happening around. And so when you're thinking, you're looking at what's the next big way in which you're going to get your people back, and because you hold out certain skills. So what are the ways that you're now going to be innovating for companies to come to you? How do you craft jobs in an opportunity deprived organization or opportunity deprived individuals? Both. Because one of the big things that you guys do is your ability to get people to shake hands. It's almost like a matrimonial site, and you do a fantastic job of this. So how do you do that? Then the third one is a lot around how will you innovate to learn more. And Sharmeen touched upon this as to what can you do to be more innovative. And I've always found it useful to learn and reskill yourself. And when you do that, then you'll find that there are a few things that keep popping here and there as ideas. The second one I talked to you about was the P of this IPS, which is to do with process, or A of IAS, called application. So what kind of application programming interface will you use in any of all that you're going to be doing? How will you digitize this whole process? How will you automate? How will you, at the moment, I'm not sure whether you're doing a lot of work on analytics, and can we start doing that? How can you use a very good CRM where you can manage your clients? Today, just because I'm not recruiting, if somebody does not call me, then I start to worry and I say, does he or she know my business good enough? Well enough so into the future what really happens. And I'm going to speak about the future very soon. So I talked about innovation process, and this is just a framework, and I'll get on to a few more things. The third one is about strategy. And strategy, you got to be looking at forecasting. Forecasting is more to do with, okay, as an organization, what will you be now moving into? How will you explore the new ways in which you're going to be looking at compensation and compensation benchmarks? Recognize that when companies look at you, they also say, how can I have resources? Either speed is what I need, or the second thing is whether they are cost effective. How do I understand job skills? Recognize that today Google does not even care whether you have a degree or not, whether people have degrees. They're looking at skills. So do we understand skills? So understanding. So that means that we've got to be investing a lot in understanding skills. How do we automate? How do we redeploy and help organizations redeploy? Many times, even if you're sitting in from outside, you can provide that bit of information, because you see, you would have placed somebody in an organization. You know that person best and his or her motivation. And they always stay connected. By the way, you stay connected with them as well. So if you look at the strategy today, look at what are the areas which are high in demand, which will have a quick rebound, and which are the ones which are going to be impacted and take longer. Longer will be oil, gas, automobiles, the consumer sector, real estate. They are badly affected. The one which is quick on the rebound will be ITS, financial services, pharma again is doing well, healthcare, EPC, infrastructure, they'll all do well. So what does it mean to me? What do I have to be doing? So very, very easy. First, you have to connect. You have to make sure that you connect with all the people that you know best. You need to connect with the people who are in organizations. You need to connect with your clients. You need to connect with your people. Second, you really will have to care for your clients. And when I talk about care, I'm talking about how you can make it easier, because currently, even with the fact that you're all working from home, you and I, everybody, we seem to be far more well connected than ever before. So if this can happen, you can take this out into the future as well. How do you look at things like automation that will help you? And by the way, all of this will not happen immediately, but at least those ideas will come through. There are a lot of challenges that will come your way. One of the big challenges is if offices are going to disappear. I'm not saying that they're going to disappear overnight. So offices are going to change their complexion. TCS has gone on record to say 75% of my people are going to be at the client side, and outside my office, only 25% will be there. So a big fancy building is not going to attract people. What will attract is what you have always been good at, getting people to understand what is work, because the one that motivates people is work. And how do you sell that work well? So your job in the absence of offices, or at least in the absence of offices going forward, is going to change dramatically. People are going to be reliant a lot more on you, because if organizations are having a freeze now, they're going to unfreeze at some time. And at that time, there's going to be a tsunami. Are you being ready in readiness for this particular tsunami? 2, do you really understand this new tsunami that is likely to strike you? And 3, do you now understand the big value that you provide? What is your differentiator? Your differentiator, and I'll just sum this up. Your biggest differentiator is speed. You understand the need. You're open. When I say open, you really understand, you're being honest both with the person who's going to hire you, and you're also honest with the person that's going into an organization. You're going to rely a lot on empathy. And today, empathy is not by meeting each other. How do you really enhance your empathy on a Zoom call? There are new ways of learning. So you got to get into new ways of learning. And of course, how do we start to communicate better? The biggest angst that organizations have with institutions that work a lot with them in securing talent on board is this lack of communication. That's undergoing a big change. And personally, what values will you now stand for? Because in the past, you would be looking at, okay, so this is a sector which is doing well for me. I will focus on that. Now, what value will you have for a sector which may not be doing well today, but tomorrow it could come back? Example, you could look at consumer. Consumer may not be doing great today, but it is going to come back with a bang. So there is a model around it. And that model is, how do you connect? And 2, how do you care? And the third one is, how do you differentiate? So connect, differentiate, and care. So if we start to look at this as a beginning, So that's a great way to redefine yourself, what your organization is doing, and recognize there is a purpose and a meaning to all what we do. With this, let me stop here. There's a lot that one can speak about. I would rather listen to you, listen to your questions, and see what we can do to respond to those. With this, let me turn this over back to Prashant.
Right. I think thank you so much for sharing all those insights. I think one very key aspect that we learned again was about developing new formats, developing new systems and processes with this time. And of course, you spoke about the tsunami that may come soon. So we're not just focusing on what's been going on, we're also looking ahead at this webinar. And that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this. Quickly, I think it would be my pleasure to look into the questions that were shared. When we focused on sharing the registration links with all the folks, all the wonderful HR fraternity that we have, within our networks, we got some wonderful questions. And while we weren't able to take all of them because there were close to 250 questions. Now, 250 questions I cannot take and I cannot share with the wonderful panelists within 1 hour. But what I will ensure is we've tried to categorize them in different sections, and that's how we'll move forward. Firstly, I think the first aspect that we will be touching upon is something that was already discussed briefly by both, which is defining the new normal. Now, when I talk about defining the new normal, a question came to us from Mr. Harmeet, who is part of the HR function and talent acquisition function and automation anywhere. He says how the new normal would look like in terms of candidate availability to relocate, understanding skills, and team working remotely. How can TA action for these new business critical needs? I'd like to put this to Sharmeen, ma'am. I think she did touch on it briefly, but I think we love for it. If you could dive a little deeper, because you spoke about teams working remotely and the candidates' availabilities to relocate. Does this change that dynamic as well? Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. So basically, am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So I think what's most likely to happen right now is because the situation is such, candidates for some time at least will be wary of moving locations, especially if they're in the green zone and the position exists in the red zone, or some people will take their time in sort of deciding to move cities and locations. So that's going to happen at least in the near to medium term. And also, like I mentioned, work from home is working pretty well. Now, depending on the type of organizations, these norms could change. And if they have found that work from home is a success for them, companies will be willing to relax rules around, relocation, etc. And this is actually good news for recruiters because they have, the talent pool really multiplies. And they have many more people to talk to for a particular position because the location constraint goes away in many, many jobs. Yeah. And secondly, like I mentioned, even jobs like processing, back-end processing, ops, and like Mr. Nathan mentioned, TCS has said that they will move a lot of those jobs either to client or work from home. So relocation is going to only reduce, is my sense, unless those are physical jobs which are factory based, etc., or R&D based where you have to be in a lab and stuff like that. Relocation is going to get reduced in the mid to long term.
Great. Thank you for those. Thank you for those insights with regards to that. I think some great examples there as well. In addition to what you had shared originally, staying in the same realm, I'd like to ask Mr. Nathan. How can and this question comes to us from a gentleman called Satish from Cognizant. He asks, how can talent acquisition utilize this opportunity to redefine its service design and operating model? Now, I know you've spoken a little bit about this, but if you could just spend a few more moments on this, how can TA take this opportunity to reduce and redefine its service design as well as operating model? Over to you, sir.
So, Satish, thank you so much. I think this is a This is a great opportunity for talent acquisition to redefine itself. What do organizations really look for? Our biggest problem is getting people on time. Our biggest problem is getting them at the right cost and getting people who are just not plug and play. These are the kinds of people who can work with us for a certain period of time and not just fill a certain position and then drop off the chair. There are three things that TA can do at the moment. One, try to understand the business in its new ways of what the business is likely to transform into. So understanding the business is going to be extremely important. So that's the first thing that I will throw out to you. Two, in the past, we could always get away with saying, okay, you know what? It's a hot market. It's difficult to get people in the market. And you can give all kinds of excuses. And businesses would look at you and say, yes, I think so. And anecdotally, you could get past that. I don't think that will work anymore. I think people will be looking at you to really and truly understand beyond the business, what is it that you'll be able to provide which is available in the market. They are looking at you not as talent acquisition, but actually as a talent acquisition advisor. That these are the sets of skills. So you need to, which is the third point I want to get to, is you need to know your market really well. So beyond the social intelligence, the talent intelligence is the one that's going to be your edge. Any person who can stand up and volubly talk about what is the migration of talent, where is it moving to, what is the talent coming into the market, and how long does it take for skills to change, what are the kind of patterns. If somebody can even spend about 30 minutes with any business leader, giving them a sense of what is happening, you can differentiate yourself. Today, many of us in talent acquisition are more like, a person who says, okay, I've got an order to take for recruiting, let's say 100 people, and I have secured all the 100. My hit rate is 100. My conversion is 98. The conversion to, so, and then we feel very smug about that. That's all going to change. All going to change. So when people are not recruiting right now, there's a squeeze. And when again the market is going to open up, today you will get to know who are the people out there who are stranded and strapped for opportunities in organizations. You would know them. And you know what kinds of skills are available. So you need to pull all your advisory skills together. That's going to be important for us. Thank you, Satish.
Great. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that. I think, like Satish shared, you've given him a very pointed answer with regards to proper steps that he can, also try to look at. Again, I think if we continue to look at this as an opportunity, it benefits everyone greatly. So thank you for bringing that point back again. Now, before, since there's a lot of conversation about the usual workforce and everything, I think now would be a great opportunity and a quick opportunity for us to take a quick look at a different kind, of workforce, which is the gig economy and recruitment consulting, focus. Now, at this stage, we've discussed a lot of things, but I think one thing at the forefront is the gig economy might have a huge role to play in the times to come. Which is why my first question, on this topic goes to Sharmeen ma'am. We received a question from Priya from Manpower Consulting. She asks, how can recruitment consulting firms reinvent themselves to add more value to clients? I think since hiring may have taken a little bit of a hit, a lot of recruitment consultants, and by the way, I just want to ensure that you are also on the same page, so that that we've got a major quantity of attendees also available from that industry. So which is why Sharmeen ma'am, I'd love to ask you, Priya's question: how can recruitment consulting firms reinvent themselves to add more value to clients?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant question, and my full empathy to the entire recruitment consultant fraternity. Most of the recruitment consulting firms, which are small and mid-sized in nature, they either work with very few clients, or they work with a certain type of industry or the certain type of functional skills. So some of them must be badly hit, because maybe the whole business is nothing is happening in their client segment, or in their in their vertical. And even if it is some things are happening within those clients, maybe those are not the skill sets on which they are they have trained resources. So we will go back to the point that both Nathan and I have been making, that this is a time to reskill and upskill. I really don't understand when people say that, oh, this person, this recruitment firm or this recruiter does this kind of hiring very well, but doesn't do the other kind that well. I think people will have to reinvent themselves and look at the bigger picture, try to understand that if where is the hiring that which means if that means connecting with the people who know that industry well, if that means just sort of do a lot of online research is available right now. One can find what are the various what does a particular industry entail. So trying to upskill, trying to sort of make yourself an expert in areas in which hiring is happening. That for sure is a change. Second, I think also is that I think outplacements will happen. Now, can recruitment consultants actually become or sort of morph into outplacement agencies, in which they say, look, you have got 100 or 200 people to sorry, lay off, and we will help sort of place these people, and they charge the companies per hire or whatever they make for that particular company. Sorry. And the third could be like we mentioned, that there will be a lot of recruitment consulting firms, their whole business model is based on per hire, a certain percentage of the fee, and so on and so forth, because there is a certain time which they take to fulfill that requirement. But if contractual based employments become very, very normal, then the norms of hiring might change, and therefore how should they actually capture data on candidates, and what data becomes more important? That they will have to look at. Maybe whether this person has great leadership skills or not, maybe that is not that important if it's a contractual kind of an obligation. Or maybe it's not important if this person has changed many jobs or not, because stability is not that an organization is looking at. So stuff like that. So if there are contractual roles which will become the norm, what is the kind of data that needs to be captured for candidates, and building a whole model around it, and trying to move into that kind of a hiring, and which means a different kind of a revenue model as well, in which you actually take a per person kind of a markup instead of a finder's fee. So I mean, basically trying to understand from the business again, what is it that has changed for them, and then redefine their business norms around that. I hope I was able to answer the question fully.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing those insights. I think you also let loose a few business plans for them as well in the middle there. I'm sure our webinar attendees will take cues from that. I'd like to sort of pose another question within the same framework to Mr. Nathan now. Ashutosh from Randstad asks, as work from home becomes the new normal, will this nudge more organizations towards the gig economy, especially for white collar professionals in technology? Now, I think it's a great question, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. with regards to moving towards a gig economy from a white collar point of view, especially from a white collar technology professional point of view. This question is from Ashutosh from Randstad. Sir.
Yeah, Ashu, this is a wonderful question. Churchill once said, "Don't let any crisis go waste." And this is a crisis where people are redefining themselves. They're also trying to take a look at what they are really good at. What will they really learn about this from? Even if companies are going to be laying off people or somebody's going to be losing a job, it's not seen as, well, this person is not okay, that's why they lost. So gently, we are moving to acceptance of the fact that there could be chunks of time when somebody is not available. And that could be for different reasons, looking after a parent or caregiving of some sort, or investing in their own learning, whatever. So all this points to a certain rise in the way that the gig economy will start to work. We have actually scratched the surface on gig economy. Today, we don't even know. Today, we don't have great portals that we can go to where we say that if we get onto this portal, we'll get the best of the gig economy workers. So for people who are working in consulting companies into recruiting, they can provide enormous amount of knowledge, because I believe that this is the one that's going to slowly move up in very many organizations. So look at it this way. There was a time when we always very worried in trying to secure somebody who's going to be a carpenter. So there's always your own carpenter that was available. Today, we have no hesitation in calling a Bourbon Club and you file something. The whole thing is automated, and there's always even a feedback that's given, and based entirely on that person could be paid, or you could even get a refund. Look at the way that the whole thing is started to move. So this is one area which is going to gather a lot of traction. So I believe, short answer, this is going to be on the rise, but it's going to be a little shaky in the beginning, but it will settle. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities, because if you know that and by the way, there are a lot of people who don't want to spend the rest of the time working in organizations for long stretches of time. And if the very thinking is changing, and if you could work for shorter periods and get paid the same amount, why not? So expertise is going to be valued over time spent on a job. So how you turn around jobs. So I see this only moving. So gig is going to be on the upswing. It's going to have a shaky start, but I believe in the next 2 to 3 years, at least, we will see the rise of the gig economy. I'm a great fan of the gig economy because I think at some stage, people who have moved away from a normal career and who have positioned themselves as consultants are the people who started the gig economy in the first place. We are now doing it and recognizing it more formally so now.
Great.
Back to Prashant.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. That gets us into a zone where we've spent time talking about the gig economy, and what I did want to sort of go back to at this stage is something that it's a question that I will post to Sharmeen, ma'am. It's a question that I think is a little. It falls under the section that I'd like to call "Is the worst behind us?" From a slightly negative point of view, but from a positive point of view, is this the future of that? What is the future of talent acquisition with regards to So we have a question from Roshan from CNH Industrial. He asks, while organizations may become conservative with external hiring and may look for internal mobility for backfills, what are some areas you think the TA partner can do to add value to the business? Now, I think that's another question that a lot of talent acquisition professionals may be wondering, that how do we fit in the puzzle where internal mobility is being used and stuff. So Sharmeen, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think recruitment folks understand the talent set. They are the ones actually who hired these people who are now being internally, wanting to be moved, right? So they are actually in the best position to, facilitate movements internally as well. The issue that I've seen some of the recruitment, folks run into is that uh, they shy away from these kind of roles. They are most comfortable actually sourcing talent from outside and facilitating the whole selection process and onboarding the person. And stuff like internal job, internal job movements, etc., doesn't come naturally to a lot of recruitment folks, is what I've seen. Which is why, again, this means that they need to reinvent themselves and they need to actually ask that, okay, if this is the role available, or if this is what my company needs help in, what can I do to reinvent myself, and in what part of this whole process do I get my own high? I mean, the biggest high for any recruiter is to, close a position and onboard the position within the given time, frame, and with high quality parameters. Oh, I mean, I upped the quality, I got them a person that they wanted, and I got them within the time and within the budget. But internal movement is not as it's a bit of a drudgery, right? So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that try to reinvent themselves a little and see that how to actually, what can they do to move people internally. They can run an excellent IJP process, internal job posting process. They can actually build a whole job board around it. If they don't have one, it's very easy to make, and actually invite applications and help the HR business partners actually move around those people. Secondly, they can actually help the HR business partners build a whole, again, skill set mapping of people who are available, and what kind of skill sets they have, where are those people needed, what will the process of selection, rejection, and stuff like that, reinventing the whole process all over again. So it's a huge opportunity, and I think recruitment professionals should leverage it.
Great. I think what we heard there, with regards to the IGP plan, anything that they can do to partner with the HR business partner, do a better job at mapping. I think all of those are great insights, and I'm sure.
Yeah. One more thing. I mean, there could be some kind of reskilling and upskilling also, which would be needed. So actually, sort of build a database of help, build HR business partner, a database of those people that, okay, this person is doing X job. The need is in the Y job. This is the gap, and this is what is needed to fill that job. So between the HR business partner, the COE team of learning and development, and the hiring team, all these three teams can come together to do a great job of running this internal movement program.
Sure. I think, again, I think that strengthens the point about collaboration within the HR vertical itself, across the various teams. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that answer. Next, I think there's only one person I'm going to put the next question to, because I think Mr. Nathan has sort of built a brand for himself, for the organization, with a great team and some great initiatives. There's very few who would be able to enlighten us as much as him on this topic. And the next question that sort of comes to us is on employer branding. It comes to us from Shweta, who is a part of the senior HR team at Indus Valley Partners. She asks, given the sudden shift to technology, how can mid-sized organizations, where their EVP is centered around great people, continue to fill critical positions? So, while everyone may have the latest cutting edge technology, a lot of, the best organizations may have the best tools available to them. How does a mid-sized organization who continues to have a solid EVP on people continue to fill critical positions? I think over to you, sir.
So I think this is a great question, and I I was, even as the question was being asked, I was reminded of the fact that the founder of Swiggy, one of the three founders, he quit Swiggy to join another firm. And it's not a very well-known firm. The very fact that he put his entire weight behind a firm, which is not very well known, goes to prove that in more ways than one, it's the job or it's an opportunity that really starts to pull people. And several years ago, and I'm talking about the time when I was a lot younger, we were sitting down in you can imagine this, huh? We were sitting in a room. It was not like a garage, but it was just an empty floor. There was just one desk which was available, a couple of chairs. That's it. And we had to get across and create a name. So we sat around that table, two of us. We didn't have chairs for everybody. A couple of us sat on the floor. Some of us were walking around. We wanted to build a company which was into networking software for telecom. So this is not like the ordinary ones. This is like super specialization. And when you had a lot of Japanese firms and they were the best in the country and in the world, and you wanted to attract people into this company, and we were wondering, first we created a name for that company. And I still remember it was Net Brahma. That was the name of the company. It was an offshoot of a company called Planet Asia. And the whole EVP was around work. It was nothing to do with the name of the organization. Because today, skills are valued. You will be able to pay that kind of money for that particular skill. Any amount of whatever that is around, okay, these are all the attendant benefits, that can be provided for. But people want to belong to a good brand. And that was the way it was for a long length of time, which is not a bad thing. But for smaller organizations, a great way to do that is what pulls people into organization is the kind of work. Let me give you examples. I mean, you don't have to go far. There is an organization not very well known in today's world with all the people who are on this call. The name of this organization is Engineers India. Engineers India, there are people who will give, I mean, if you go to some of the engineering colleges who understand the value of this particular organization, they will give the right arm to come and work for this organization. It's a Government of India enterprise. It attracts the best of people. It's not like it can pay the best. It's not very well known. But why people go into such organization is work. They know that they are going to get the best of projects. They're going to be working with the best of the best minds that are available. And therefore, the only thing that we can do as part of the EVP is how do you build something which says, this is what you can create. In today's world, if you look at all the millennials, everybody wants to look at what is the purpose. And if we can define that purpose, get people to enjoin and conjoin in their efforts, then you would have something where people will come in and say, I want to work for this mid-sized organization. I have been part of building up organizations, Indian organizations, and I know what it is because you're trying to bring in people and making an organization extraordinary, or bringing in extraordinary people into an organization with the hope that you're going to make it even better. So there are ways of putting all this together. It starts with defining work. It starts with defining the purpose and a vision. Once you put that vision out, then that compelling vision is what attracts people. Then the rest of it is a lot about the details. And then recognize that the biggest thing that happens in organization when you're trying to do all of this together is to have a good leadership team. So starting with a good leadership team, and then when you find that others start to join, people will say, this is a good organization. I'd like to be part of this organization. So that's how you start to build an organization. Brand gets built over time. You don't start to say, I want to build a brand and I'm going to do this. You start by saying, I want to build a good organization. This is what I have as an EVP. And this is how we will be doing things. And all of us know this. If it's about culture, if it's about values, if it's inherent value for the people that you hold, if it's about respect. Now, all these, many people think are given. It's not given. They have to be built, and very carefully so. Then you would be able to attract a lot of people. And not to forget, at the end of the day, people will still want to make sure that it's a stable organization. It's not something that keeps changing hands. And there are people today who are quite okay to do that. But if it is part of your EVP, that's also fine. But it starts with defining what you wish to do and spending time. This is where many of us who are on the call today are invested. My greatest ally at the time when we were building out these organizations, and credit goes to many of you, are the talent acquisition specialists. Because you people help to build organizations. You know how to spot them. You know how the best of the best are. You know how people are wired. And you'll be able to bring those people on board. Sometimes you don't know what you bring to the table. Many times you possibly think that, okay, I'm adding a certain dollar value or a rupee value to the basket. No, you're adding value to the organization, and they will always come back to you. So back to Prashant.
Great. I think thank you so much for those wonderful insights again. I think the last time me and you had a conversation, our conversations were about stories. So thank you for bringing one more story to this call as well. I think it was a lovely conversation about that story and how mid-sized organizations can actually achieve their target of building a brand over time. So thank you for that. We're just at the last one or two questions that we had planned. I'd just like to sort of tell the panelists as well that we've had close to 500 webinar attendees at all times that have stayed with us through a technical glitch, through any of my mistakes or anything that I've done wrong, and they've been there to support us through. So thank you to all the attendees as well. I will do a proper thank you for you guys again after these questions. But for now, just to sort of go to the last two questions, and firstly to Sharmeen ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask you a question that comes in from Radhika, who's a part of the talent acquisition team at Indium Software. She asks, lack of personal touch could lead to a drop in acceptance ratio. How can we overcome challenges of e-hiring in an already slow market? I'd request you to just sort of give us an answer that can be crisp, and so that we can move forward to the next question as well.
Well, I'd like to challenge that assumption, honestly, Radhika. Like Mr. Nathan also mentioned initially, that the concept of office itself is changing, right? That personal touch was about sort of calling the person into the office, showing that person around, giving him a dream that, oh, this is where you will sit, this is where you will eat, and this is who I am, etc. So if those norms are changing and organizations are going to maybe reimagine the way of working, then I'm just wondering why will we not be effective in this changed world as well, right? While of course there's huge value in handshakes and basically physically meeting somebody, and engagement levels are much higher. I don't deny that, but I'm just saying that if the whole sort of the whole system is changing, then I think there are honestly, I really enjoyed a digital birthday party that I attended for my friend's 50th birthday, right? And we all sort of prepared songs and we sang and we had a great birthday party. And I thought, wow, this is also different. And we, and I'm sure all of you must be doing it at homes with drinks in our hand and, just sort of wishing the person, etc., etc. So there was a lot of camaraderie and, happiness that we were able to create. So I'm just wondering whether maybe we will be able to create the same in the digital medium as well. We need to be creative. We need to be innovative. and and the new ways of thinking and the new ways of doing things will help us reimagining this as well. For example, I mean, we have just onboarded some interns for our marketing and business roles from a lot of premium campuses. We've done a digital onboarding for them, and I think it's a great experience. I'm sure they must be feeling very happy. The internships, they were sort of honored. Like, unlike a lot of companies, we honored those internships, and now we are trying our best to actually make the internship experience good for them and memorable for them, and of value to them. So similarly in hiring as well, new ways will emerge, and I'm sure they will be maybe we might be surprised, and maybe they'll be more effective.
Great. I think not only did we just get some steps, innovation, and a lot of those things, we also got a wonderful real life example that I'm sure if e-birthday parties can happen, I'm sure e-hiring should not be a problem as well, right? Thank you so much for that example, ma'am. In closing, we're at the last question, and while I would love for sir to answer this question, after the question, after the answer is done, I'd also love a closing remark from sir, because after the answer, we will have, the absolute end of this wonderful webinar. We've been able to do this well within time, despite the initial glitch. So, sir, the last question comes to you from a point of view of an individual recruiter, and I'm sure this is a question that a lot of recruiters might have. It's a question that I'm sure a lot of non-recruiters are also thinking. It comes from Monica from Reliance Industries. She asks, what are some of the new skills we should acquire to face post-COVID-19? Now, I don't think there could be a better question to bring everything to a closure to. So, sir, over to you.
So there are some tried and tested stuff. I will tell you a couple of things that post-COVID is going to come to fore. The first and foremost are your digital skills. And what is a person on the other side? I mean, you're calling up somebody, but what we don't do very well is follow up. We don't close, whether the person is going to be in or out, the person does not know. And we keep people hanging. So can we start to build the second skill, which is even as important as the digital skill, is empathy. They will come back to you. There have been many, I mean, I have been a recruiter, by the way, just because some of us start to move into roles such as CHROs, recognize that all of us start, and Sharmeen is smiling because she also knows the kind of recruiting we all have to do at whatever level that we have to do. But even every one of this, it's about empathy. People may not join you the first time. They're always very worried, but we've got to take people along the curve. So that's the second skill that I would urge you to start to build. The third one in the post-COVID world is you're watching people on camera. You're interviewing people on camera. Earlier, you could see people's hands. Today, you can't see people's hands. Why? Because you can only see up to, let's say, a person's neck, because that's all that is visible on the camera. How will you read the expressions? So you really will have to start to understand what is the voice of the unsaid, what is the unkahi. What is it that the person is saying? What is it that the person is not saying? And therefore, your ability to ask questions, your ability to seek the right answer is about asking the right question. So your questioning ability will have to get sharpened to a point where you're able to really read whether the person is in the room or on a voice call. It doesn't really matter. You will really understand that person. So some of the softer skills will have to be learned. Last but not the least is something that I referred to earlier. You have to understand the industry and where it is moving to. You have to understand competition. You have to understand where are the large skill pools available? So you got to look at the pool. You got to understand. So, for example, all of us know which is the swimming pool that all of us would love to dive into, which is the river that we can swim, which is the one that we cannot. We need to understand all of that. And whereas it comes in very intuitively, here we have to make an effort. That's where it all starts. So one is on the hard skills, which is understand digital, understand patterns, understand what is happening. Till yesterday, you may not be interested in the economy of the country or the world, or where the business is moving. Today, you need to understand that. So that's another skill. So you put all this in the mix, you will find that you'll get to be a better professional. Why only a talent acquisition professional? You'll be a leader of tomorrow if you do all of this. Because this skill is agnostic to whatever role that you're performing. So on that note, let me turn this back to you, Prashant.
Great. I think once again, we've had some really real life examples as well within that conversation, things that we've all done and things that I think are, like you said, they're industry agnostic, vertical agnostic. Great to hear that again. Before I sort of conclude everything, Sharmeen ma'am, would you like to sort of just say one or two lines in your experience today and one closing piece of advice to all the wonderful attendees who spent their Friday evening with us, by the way. 400,
Yes.
500 of them have spent their Friday evening with us.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, thanks to all of you. And, it was a very good experience for me to be in this webinar to sort of talk about some of these things which I've been reflecting upon and do some forward thinking with all of you. Thank you, Prashant, Utsav, Mr. Nathan, and all the webinar attendees. And all the best to you. Well, my closing remark will be with basically what I began with. Stay positive. There are a whole lot of opportunities. Just focus on sort of keeping yourself abreast, and digitization is the way ahead. Thank you.
So would you like to say anything before we sort of conclude?
Yeah, there are two things. One of them very close to what Sharmeen just mentioned. I have 4 words that have helped me through the best of times and through the worst of times. And these 4 words are things that I almost kind of write and hang up in my wall or write down on my notebook. It just says, even this shall pass. So we have to gear ourselves for tomorrow. So what is it that we will start to be ready? Because all of us, and by the way, we have all been doing it intuitively. When we were young, we used to learn how to walk, right? We used to trip and fall. Nobody taught us how to walk, but we started to walk. One fine day, we were wobbling along and we started to walk and then to run. We will all walk, we will all run. And by the way, we will all fall, we will again rise. So on that note, recognize that this is all but a cycle. The sun always sets only to rise again. All the very best. Thank you so much for attending. And I can't tell you how indebted I am to you, Prashant, and to you, Sharmeen, because the value that you bring in is the new thought. And that's what is required for the new age. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to both the panelists for sharing those wonderful insights. And now I speak to you, all the attendees. Thank you so much for spending your Friday evening with us. Friday 5 p.m. is probably the most unfortunate time that we could have picked. But as I've learned from this call, everything is an opportunity, and I think no one else tried this time out, and we did, and it's worked brilliantly for us because 400 to 500 is a great number of attendees, diverse industries, diverse verticals of HR. Thank you so much for joining us. Just before I conclude, I think it's very, very important that I let you know about the Step Up initiative by Naukri.com. It is an initiative that works on the job seeker side as well as the employer side. There's lots of features available to the companies who are looking to hire on the portal, as well as the job seekers who are looking out for jobs. You can find a lot of those details on the Naukri.com website as well. feel free to write to us as well. As far as this webinar goes, this was the first in a line of many that we do plan to do. We've started it off with a slight technical glitch. Hopefully you all will forgive me for that, and we can move forward and do this again. Next time, I promise you it will not be a Friday evening at 5 p.m. We'll look at a different time as well. And I look forward to seeing all of you again. For now, from Naukri.com, Infoedge family, I am Jobs Hirist. We wish you a very, very safe and stay at home phase, within this pandemic. We wish you love and light. And thank you so much for joining all of us here.